welcome to the April 22nd council meeting. Mayor Venice is out of town. She's in Decatur, Georgia, attending a walkability conference. The first item of business is the public forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the city council on any city-related issue, except for those items which have already been heard by hearing official or are on tonight's agenda as public hearings. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and light indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. And would the second person please take, is the chair there? Take the chair to the right of the podium. First speaker, Paul Dart, followed by Josh Korn.
Councilors, I appreciate this opportunity. I'm Paul Dart. I'm a physician in Eugene and South Eugene. I'm not sure which ward I'm in. I'm here to talk about 5G. I'm not here to tell you what the FCC says you can or can't do about it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a physician who spent several years studying the health effects of pulse microwave cellular transmissions in detail. What I'm here to tell you is that there is clear documented evidence of harm from such exposures. And anyone who tells you that there really isn't that much known about the biological effects of this either hasn't done any research on it or is blowing smoke at you. I gave you some information a week ago. I believe it was put in your email in trays or whatever they do for you. One of those articles was something I wrote for eWeb in 2013, reviewing a lot of the research up to that point in time. The other was a review by Martin Paul, where a meta-review of other reviews of this. He reviewed about 95 different research reviews. About 90 of them are in this pile here. I just want to say there's a lot known. Things that we do know about this, it's not the problem that things aren't known, it's that policymakers aren't paying attention to the research results. We know that RF can cause neurological effects, anxiety, depression, cognitive issues. Right now, a record number of children in high school and young people in college are on anxiety and antidepressive medications in our city and elsewhere in the country. And we're all getting just a little more revved up, I think. And part of that is these exposures. We know that RF can cause sleep disturbance. The CDC says it's a public health epidemic now. If we have more RF in this town, we'll have more of that. And I think that if you could shield your home right now, you'd be surprised at how much better you would sleep. We know that RF can decrease fertility, and right now fertility rates in the developing world are dropping more rapidly than anybody understands and that anybody can explain with current models of explanation. We know that RF can cause cancer in humans and animals. And right now, brain tumors are one of the leading causes of cancer in young children. It's a big change. Anything we can do to reduce the increase of exposure to these things in our town will be good for the health of this community. Anything we can do to delay or slow this will be helpful. I think that it's possible 5G will kind of break the back of this whole problem by making all these issues more clear. And it would be better if that happened in a different community than ours. So I urge you to consider anything you can to delay this issue from happening here.
Thank you. Next speaker is David Korn, followed by, Josh Korn, I'm sorry, followed by David Piccioni.
Thank you, City Council. I appreciate you hearing us. My name is Joshua Korn, and I'd like to speak about 5G. And let's just be clear about what this technology is. Pulsed millimeter waves, phased array antennas. this SMART technology. SMART stands for Secret Military Armaments in Residential Technology. This is military technology being brought into the residential space, and it is a serious breach of our safety, and it really needs to be taken, not taken lightly. You know, headlines like, I mean, just look at any issue of Aviation Week in space technology, going back decades, and you'll see how this technology has evolved. Headlines like, radar becomes a weapon, directed energy takes an unexpected turn and surfaces as a handy anti-missile device that can be built into aircraft, ship, and ground-based radar. So things like unmanned aerial vehicles are supported by infrastructure like 5G. The understanding, it's pretty commonly understood now that 5G is going to support autonomous vehicles, but what is not so clear is that it will also support a huge array of actual military aircraft, and this is something that we need to take note of. Active electronically scanned arrays, high-powered microwave technology, multi-platform radar technology insertion programs. These are all things that led up to directed energy weapons systems developed by Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and other military contractor companies under black projects. And that's what 5G is. And that's why this is really serious. And even if the federal government ends up, or federal government / telecoms sue local municipalities over this, it's worth getting into those lawsuits because we need to beat those lawsuits and stop this technology. Thank you.
Thank you. David Piccioni.
David Ivan Piccioni.
Followed by, I'm not sure the name of Farhan Khan, I think.
I'll say one sure thing. I would like my internet to be faster. One thing that's talked about a lot when trying to sway populations with this issue about the 5G is research. I've done research with proton-induced X-ray instruments in my third year of college. Usually research is done in your senior year, but I did it in my third year. It is, wavelength of electromagnetic rays are the inverse of the frequency. The higher the frequency, the higher the danger. The frequency is how fast it goes up and down. All electromagnetic radiation goes at the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second. These microwaves, they have a smaller frequency than light, visible light. Now, we have done damage to the ozone layer, allowing a lot of ultraviolet rays, which increases cancer, there's no doubt about that. But microwaves are not as dangerous as visible light, the light that, all the light that we see. Indigo, purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. What's it? Oh, so the only way that microwaves could be dangerous is if you use those things to, when the sun shines on it and it makes the fire start, what do you call those things? Magnifying glass. If some enhancer or some kind of inducer of higher concentrations apply to this microwaves, then it could be dangerous. But just by itself, the guys who discovered microwave had a candy bar in his pocket. They were studying microwaves, and they noticed that it melted, and nothing happened to those guys. And I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying anything definitely for or against it, but I'm just saying it needs to be studied a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is, I
I'll say it.
think I mispronounced the name, but,
It's Farhan.
okay.
Yes. My name is-
Followed by Jennifer, Publis, I think. Not sure how to pronounce that either.
Jennifer Q. Public.
What?
Jennifer Q. Public.
Oh, Jennifer Q. Public. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Farhan, and I am a Eugene resident, and I'm with Ward 5, I believe. And I'm here to change the topic, and I'm going to talk about the safety issues that I've been in business in Eugene for almost 22 years in Eugene, and I own a 7-Eleven down on in the Whitaker neighborhood, 6th and Blair. And lately, we have been noticing over the last 2 years that our city has kind of ignored our neighborhood, and most of our forces are being pushed onto this area, the downtown area, to glorify the downtown area, less of our neighborhood. And recently, we had an incident where two people walked into our store and beat the hell out of my employees, and it was pretty violent. And we have video of it, but I don't think we have time to share it. But if you would like to see it, we have video on it. It's just trying to show you the intensity of the violence that we have been dealing with. And then, to add insult to injury, after 2 days, these perps were let go, and they were walking around our neighborhood. And I don't know how we can deal with this. I don't know how we can stay safe. One of the employees had to go to the hospital. She had a concussion and a broken tooth. And she quit. I mean, she's ready to quit. The other one, I don't know, she's okay. They fling these girls around. I mean, there were two girls, and these two big people walked in and did this. And then a few days later, 3 days later, we had a guy who came to our location, laid on our apron with his butt up, his head on the ground with no pants. And he was there from 6:30 to 9:30, and nobody showed. We called 911, we called the Eugene police, and then we had to innovate how we called the police to come and help us out. So we called the 911 again, and we said there's a guy who's passed out, or we don't know if he's dead. And that's when the ambulance showed up to pick him up. So I don't know if they picked him up. I think they had to call Cahoots again to come and get him because he was out of his mind. And we had that for almost 3 hours. So lately we have had incidents where employees will call me at 6:30 in the morning saying, this guy's been there since 6:30 to 9:30 and nobody has showed up. So I don't know how we can get this resolved, how we can focus in our areas. And I've talked to our community, and they tell us that they have noticed more of this in our neighborhood. And I see where you want to beautify this part of the town. We need help there. I think you're pushing people over to us from here. I don't know what the solution is. I need a solution. We all need a solution. I used to own another 7-Eleven. I had to let go of it. That was on 7th and Jefferson because I couldn't handle it. Same thing happened over there. The guy was out of his mind. He ran after my employee and he beat the hell out of him there too. That was my last time over there. Here, I don't know if I should carry on.
Thank
And
you.
my time is up. Thank you.
Next, Jennifer Public, followed by Tony you'll know who you are.
DeVary.
Go ahead.
So that poor man, he doesn't know it, but it's like a big commercial for Jerry's. We could be talking about 5G because it affects your neurological system. It will take over your body, whether you want it to or not. Do some research. It's very deep and very intense, but don't go in there alone because it's very dark. My story is I had done some research. I lived with an amazing, intelligent researcher. We were walking way back in September last fall, and we spotted a man up a pole. And having been just recently educated on 5G, I yelled at him up that pole. I said, "Are you installing 5G?" He was very defensive. "What? How do you know? How do you know? Who told you?" I said, "No one had to tell me." He said, yes, he was. After he confessed to that, he was kind of like at a confessional, and he just let the dam burst. He said he would be installing 800 units in Eugene alone. He said that we had flown him over from Alaska to go across the country. He said that Oregon, California, and Hawaii would be more heavily targeted than the rest of the United States. He asked me what I knew about those states, what they had in common. I said, we are progressive. And he says, you said it, I didn't. So I'm pretty aware of 5G. He said he lives in Alaska, and once he makes all his money to support his family, after targeting all of ours, he'll go back to Alaska, as did his coworker. He said he would move out of here, out of the United States, and, well, obviously Alaska. He would only live in Alaska due to the nature of this military-grade weapon. 3 and 4G can sustain all of our technology needs. 5G is a military-grade weapon. It should not exist. Some of my symptoms as a parent, professional vocalist, proud activist, and educator, I went without my hearing for 10 days. It's awfully hard to manage a classroom that's probably outnumbered, if you can't hear. I have employers who would vouch for me that I have not missed a day of work in many years. And since December, since feeling the effects beginning in December, I've missed several days of work. I have several different jobs I've missed from both locations of my work. You can see how this could lead to lack of employment and houselessness. Symptoms: couldn't hear. I felt like my brain was poached like an egg. It was popping. This is very dangerous. I have electromagnetic brain and nervous system injury, and I have no health care to prove it. But I would love accountability, because someone is behind all of this, and people need to be held accountable for their actions.
Thank you.
This is unacceptable.
Next is Tony, and I'm sorry I didn't pronounce your name, but followed by John Thielking.
It's Tony DeVary, and I'm here to speak in regards to 5G. I'm highly opposed. I have grandchildren. These towers will be near our schools. They have documented that this can cause health problems, not only in humans, but it will then decimate our pollinators and our birds. And it is affecting the trees and planets in Europe. So I'm very concerned that we would allow this in our community or in any community until we understand the full health disadvantages that it might behold on us. I don't think it's needed. I think that with the 3G and the 4G, we can do everything we need from a perspective with our computers and our phones, probably more than we need right now. The other thing that I wanted to discuss is similar to what the person spoke about in regards to the safety in our community. And I have some real, it's getting to be where it's uncomfortable to go places where you used to be able to walk freely. And I noticed this when I lived in Europe and I came home and noticed there was garbage everywhere. And then I noticed that people were sleeping on the sidewalks and that the population is growing and the homeless, but we're really not taking care of them. And I'd like to know what the approach is to really provide care for these people, where we have programs where we can get them off the street and where our streets are safe for people to bike ride with their children, where we're not afraid that we'll be poked by needles in the park, where the park attendants that are supposed to be keeping our parks up are cleaning up the garbage and the needles. But it goes beyond that, where we need a program where we can help these people with care and compassion. Allowing them to camp and live on the streets isn't caring and is not compassionate. And I'd just like to know what kind of programs the city has to start addressing this, and I'd be happy to get involved. I'm very goal-orientated. You give me a tick list, you point me in the direction, and I'll get it done. But I think in both of these instances, we have an opportunity to improve our communities, show care and compassion for fellow human beings and our planet and our bees and animals that we live with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Thielking, followed by Heidi Bro.
So you say you want a downtown shelter by John Thielking, Ward 1, Eugene. I've been really nonplussed lately at the latest moves by the Police Chief Skinner and the City Manager John Riz and the City Council to do a makeover of the City of Eugene in a way that continues to intensify the crackdowns against the poor while ignoring the wishes and needs of the people. While it's true that when I went downtown on Friday, April 19, 2019, I did still see people busking both in compliance with the new downtown activity zone rules and non-compliance, I personally don't feel comfortable risking getting a ticket for not complying with the rules. The rules really should be what the Constitution says, not what some bureaucrat says. And despite the phrase, freedom isn't free, I don't think I should have to face the possibility of having to relitigate the whole entire Constitution every time I step outside my front door to go downtown. This displeasure over the new DAS rules has set me on a course of some serious brainstorming over the past couple of weeks. I suppose that I should refrain from giving away the exact trade secrets in my public statements here, but I can touch on a few points that are under development and ask for some help in making these goals a reality, which is much more likely to occur if I'm not the only one doing all the labor and fundraising. First, I have started having flea markets for at least the next few Sundays at my apartment complex on West 7th and Van Buren in Eugene. I'm asking for the vendors to donate 10% if they're willing to of their gross sales to me so that I can explore using my private money to set up at least one of the 3 possible new infrastructure projects to help the unhoused. This would include an indoor space for selling downtown, which would be completely removed from possible harassment of unlicensed vendors by the police. Also in the works are 24-hour storage of personal belongings for a rate of $1 per day per 3 cubic feet in the locker at a location in the center of downtown, which in turn could fund the tying up of and later improvements upon one of at least 2 sites that are zone industrial, one of which is located in the heart of downtown. They could be converted into a space that would be permitted as a homeless shelter with rents 10 by 10 foot cubicles for sleeping for $250 a month. For those who oppose panhandling, you would be welcome to pay it forward by donating to help one or more unhoused pay for their storage. Your donation would do double duty, as most of it would go to the other 2 infrastructure projects, not just overhead and employee salaries. It has also been said that there's a bigger picture here too, and that is that the unhoused don't so much need the infrastructure improvements described above as they need access to good jobs without needing to have proper state-issued ID. The whole issue of forcing employers to use systems such as E-Verify could be re-examined, as well as expanding the opportunities available to earn money without having ID, such as I currently offer with card sales and pay to blog. And if you want more information about this, you can look up couchwithing.org and my newest website, which is thebusstation.org. Thank you.
Thank you. And I really butchered the next name, but congratulations on recognizing yourself, and you will pronounce it right. Followed by Art Baldwin.
Good afternoon and good evening, Council. Thank you. My name is Eden Manis-Brew. I am a disabled homeless man who is currently residing in an RV in West Eugene. I'm here to address the issues of the unfair practice of the permits being issued during Saturday and only Saturdays for the plaza here. This permit is only being issued through Saturday market. Their bottom line is pretty simple: maximize profit. Issuing these permits, I've already talked to Emily Simple, as councilor here, about all of my concerns and ways we can ratify this. Quite frankly, I think the permits need to be done away with completely. In my opinion, I think if you look into history, you'll find out that Miller versus Eugene already went to a Supreme Court ruling, said street vending is a constitutionally protected right of free speech. This was later ratified a few years later with Valkyrie versus the city of Eugene, where they arrived their decision on the original Supreme Court ruling that street vending is a protected right of free speech. Imposing a permit in Free Speech Plaza for people who are vending their art is a constitutional violation. Supreme Court ruling. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about these kids because unlike me, unlike a lot of people, my bottom line isn't something I can fold in my pocket and put away. I go down there with a currency that you can unfold. These 4 children came to my booth. They saw my magic items, my fairy wands, my fairy doors, fell in love with them. Their dad says, let's go. We'll make some money. Week later, they came back. Kids jumping up and down, happy as hell. They'd mowed lawns, did dishes, washed cars. They came back and they each bought those doors. I sell the doors for $35 a piece, one of them for $45. They got 4 doors for $100 because those kids went out and worked. on their vacation. You see, they were here from Arizona. So this bottom line of the dollar out here doesn't help feed the culture of this community. Those people went home and told their friends about me. Those kids told their friends about me. You put that permit in place, you make it impossible for me to make these dreams happen. Stop killing the damn dream. It's not right. You don't have a right to do that. I want it ended. End the permit thing. It's stupid. You can't fold that up in your pocket, what I do. Some of the money I make, I donate to community-supported shelters, Opportunity Village, other unhoused groups. I am a homeless man making a couple of fucking dollars, and you're taking that away from me, and I am not going to tolerate it. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Art Baldwin, followed by Robert Hersley, I think.
Art Bowman, First Ward. I've been reading a lot about various tax measures that will be on the ballot this May in less than 2 weeks. There's a measure for the courthouse and also a measure to keep 4G funding. And while I was thinking about how I'd vote for them, I realized there was a wild card. I heard some discussion of a public service tax a few weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything since there. So that's sort of a wild card there. And there are some questions I feel I need answered before I decide how to vote on these others two. What is the current status of this public service tax? And will it be voted on by the council, or will it be put on the ballot in this fall? I imagine it's too late to put it on in May. Will it be a regressive tax or a flat tax, or will it be a progressive tax? What will this be used for? I know most municipalities, when faced like events like the 2021 track and field championship, do increase spending on public safety. Is it for this, or will people be asked for more money in a year or so for 2021? And if not, then will the money here be spent for it, or how are you going to pay for that? Just a number of answers, how it will be used, how much it will be. This is something voters take into account when they're voting on other measures, and I really wouldn't feel comfortable voting on these measures until I knew what this mystery tax would consist of. And if you can't answer tonight, I'm wondering if the answers will be answered by May 1st when the ballots go out so other voters can take this into account. So I'll be waiting for some answers later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Herschel, followed by Victor Oldlick.
Thank you, council members, for hearing us. I'm here as a resident.
Can you tell us your name, please?
Roberly Hirsch. It's like Robert, it is an L-Y instead of a T. Okay. I moved here in 2008 to help out with the meditation center here, the Brahma Kumaris Worldwide Spiritual University, the Raja Yoga Meditation Center on 175 East 31st Avenue. I live right across the street at 150 East 31st Avenue. I'm part of the Southeast Neighborhood. I was Vice President of the Southeast Neighborhood Association for 2 years when Heather Selleck was the president. And I'll be rejoining Southeast Neighborhood Association next week. And so I'm 77 years old. I'm in pretty good health because I'm very proactive with my health. I'm a member of the YMCA and Eugene Yoga. I go to classes every day, 1 or 2 classes every day to keep my health. And I'm very concerned about 5G towers. I've never been comfortable with cell phones from the very beginning when they came out. And if I put them up against my head felt funny, and I would get headaches later. So I only use them at a distance from me, and then only to make phone calls. But I don't know how I would evade the emissions coming from a 5G tower. How would I escape them? How would I protect myself? And a lot of the people feel the same frustration. Where would they go? I've really enjoyed retiring here in Eugene. And I wouldn't like to move. I wouldn't know where to move to from here. Well, I have some ideas, but there would be maybe Australia. Australia is figuring out ways to go around 5G. It was a very interesting talk at the Southeast Neighborhood Association presented 2 weeks ago at the Good Samaritan. We had a Dr. Hero there. He's a PhD in life sciences and also a medical doctor. And he presented the whole history of electricity and health to our association there. It was a full house. All the seats were taken, and there were a lot of people standing, and a lot of people asked questions. You can view that on YouTube, or go to Families for Safe Meters, and we have a link, I believe, to that video. And one of our members is a PhD toxologist. I don't know if she specializes in agriculture and toxology in regards to insects and pests and agriculture. And she put together this paper, which I gave you, from the Environmental Health Trust. And she added links on here of the scientific research that's been done, which is some really good things that you could click on here and get educated about the dangers of 5G to our community. I think it would be the end of our community if these towers go up.
Next speaker is Victor, I'm not sure the last name, but
Victor Adlenbach.
thanks, and followed by Robin
And Lorraine
Bloomgarden.
Highway, right at the top of Lorraine there. So this is just, very graphic for any cameras. Danger, radiation hazard. And here's a sign that was on some utility poles. Warning, coming to a utility pole near you. 5G, 5th generation cellular. Home and tax base devaluation. You just try and sell a house anywhere in Eugene once this is there. I mean, this will make it like the Depression. Forget it. People will move out. No one will live here. Secondly, quoting Dr. Martin Paul Dart, Paul Haro, they would all agree with the statement, there are crucial health implications for humans, animals, and plant life that the public needs to understand if 5G is to be activated. Now, the little critters like the cats and the birds, they're very sensitive to electricity. And 3 weeks ago, my neighbor had a smart meter put in. They didn't want it, but eWeb snuck in and just did it. A week after that smart meter was installed, her very healthy cat, which I've seen every day for 3.5 years, it's not old, it chases butterflies and whatever it can find, it's just wasted away, and it died. It got really, really sick within 1 week of that meter going in. So this is the canary in the mine. This is really, really dangerous. And one other thing, a friend of mine who made these signs saw, these 5G phones are a weapon. They are not 2 watts like your normal cell phone, but they're 20 watts, and they have very big batteries in them. And you can call them. Some hackers did this and jam them, and then they get really hot from all this calling, and they will explode. And they did this on the corner of Monroe and 13th, right by the museum. There were a bunch of hackers doing it. My friend rolled by, and she said, what's going on? And she watched 6 of them explode. And then she said, hey, can you give me 2 of those cell phones? Because I'm into electronics and physics. She's very smart. She's brilliant. And she has them if you want to get hold of them. But these are really dangerous weapons. What they do is they have the little antennas on them that track. They use this in airports navigating. They track as you go from post to post. Because those antennas are turning, those 4 antennas focus on the beam. And then you could focus. And if you get jamming of lots of signals going, the thing will get so hot you can't hold it in your hand. And she saw 6 of them explode right before her eyes. She didn't make a video of it, but it was a week ago last Wednesday.
Thank you. Robin Bloomgarden, followed by Victor Ngio.
Hi. Robin Bloomgarden. I just have a very short piece. This was pulled out of the Weekly a few weeks ago, and the title is, "Oh My 5G." It's clear this paper was sold down the river because you've done nothing to investigate the dangers of 5G. I know some people have been talking about the real estate impacts, FCC usurpation, or CIA implemented mind control intent. See, the problem no one wants to talk about is the consequences of this next generation of the internet. Because of 5G, my kids are losing their ability to reproduce. The 5G microwaves have cooked up all of their sperm and eggs. How do I know this, you may ask? Well, I had our pediatrician test them. And that was it. And I'm close to being an RF refugee myself, so I can relate to a lot of the stuff that all these people are talking about. It's scary. I don't know if I'll ever be able to leave my house, and I may have to fortify everything and live in a cage, a metal cage, to try and make it so I can function in my own home. So I really hope that you guys are paying attention to what's going on. This is pretty scary stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Ngio, followed by Sean Winter. You're Sean.
You should know who he is. Any
Okay,
victors?
Victor is not here, I take it. So this is Sean Winter.
Hello, I'm Sean Winter. I'm a small business owner in Ward 3. Fear is a funny thing. A lot of folks are talking about fear. It's not always clear what fears are founded and what fears are illusory. But last week or 2 weeks ago, Chief Skinner was talking about advancing the police budget, $23 million, largely to address people's fears. A lot of people have fears walking around downtown. Some of those fears are based in reality. The gentleman who owned the 7-Eleven had a real incident that sounds horrific. Not all of those fears are justified, though. $23 million is a lot of money to ask for. And if he's asking for that money because people feel afraid when they see homeless people, then maybe we should spend $23 million to house homeless people. It just seems like if we have broken windows, we can fix the broken windows, or we can have a bunch of police around to make everyone feel uncomfortable about the whole situation. Having it be paid for with a regressive tax that's going to hurt people on the lower income strata, potentially driving more people into homelessness, just exacerbates the problem. Chief Skinner spoke about database policing. I think that looking into the data would be really helpful. I think that we need to have an open discussion about what sorts of calls are being unanswered. Are these unanswered calls like from the gentleman with the 7-Eleven who has a real incident of violence happening? Or are these calls from people saying that they feel uncomfortable because they see something that might be strange or different? I'd like to see that data. I'd like to see the data that shows how much we're spending per officer compared to other cities of our size. I'd like to see the data for crime statistics. I'd like for us to talk about what are the actual statistics for incidents, not feelings, not anecdotes, not premonitions, not fears, but the actual statistics so that we can have a more rational, non-anecdotal conversation before we spend $23 million. Just meditate on that sum and think about the amount of housing that could purchase. There are a lot of complaints about trash. There's complaints about human waste, but we don't have any public toilets or public receptacles for waste. So maybe a small thing we could do before investing $23 million to scare people is buy some trash cans, have some public toilets, build some housing. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last speaker. And do I close the public hearing before councilors? speak? No, afterwards. Do any counselors have comments? Counselor Syret.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone who came to speak. Really appreciate it. For the gentleman with the assault that happened at the 7-Eleven, that 7-Eleven is in my neighborhood, not very far from my home. So I'm very, very sorry that your employees went through that really traumatic experience. And I can't speak to the particulars of why those assailants were released. That has to do with the district attorney and charging. But if you were willing to give your contact information to the city manager, I could connect with you and see if I can get you better connected with the police response. There shouldn't be an assumption that because you're in Whitaker, you just get to put up with that stuff. And we have heard from Whitaker folks about their concern that the work we're doing downtown is pushing out, and West University is also experiencing that. So Chief Skinner is aware of that as an issue. It was one of the first things I spoke to him about before he even got the job. And so I am interested in connecting with you more directly so I can see if I can facilitate some better response for your needs. In terms of this mysterious public safety tax, we've had a couple of public discussions about it at City Council. Those are available online. We're not done discussing it. We have not come to any conclusions about what, where, when, or how, but we have some things shaped up. I do want to say to our last speaker's comments, it is not my intention that if we were to implement a new tax, it would be to do more enforcement on homeless people. That is not the purpose of increased public safety. We have lots of calls for service in this community that have absolutely nothing to do with homeless people, and we have lots of criminal activity in this community that is perpetrated by people who are housed. So that is not why we are having that conversation. The city and the county is getting ready to present, I believe, on May 13th, our recommendation for implementing the TAC report, which is an effort by the city and the county to, one, utilize our current resources for prevention and housing people who need emergency shelter better than we are now, and move towards improving our system, including building a public shelter, so that we can start doing a better job at serving people in need with care and compassion, as another speaker pointed out today. So we are really working on all fronts to try and address both the public safety issues and the needs of those who are unhoused. There's a big role for the county in that as well that we need to keep working on in terms of alcohol and drug counseling and rehabilitation. But thank you, everyone, for your comments this evening.
Councilor Clark.
I'm sorry. Councilor Syret addressed all the things I was going to say to this gentleman, so she covered it.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, all the people who came. I can't say it was a happy evening, but I appreciate your comments. And close the public hearing. Next item is the consent calendar. Council Vice President.
We don't have consent calendar.
We do.
Move to pass.
Yes, we do. Minutes and.
It's at the bottom. I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor? Thank you. Consent calendar is passed. And next item is a work session on the expanded hours at Autzen Stadium. City Manager, do you have?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Councilor Taylor. And Becky DeWitt here is to provide a brief overview for the work session, and then, of course, questions for you. And really what we're asking tonight is whether or not you would like to move an ordinance to a public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Becky DeWitt from the City Manager's Office, here to talk about expanded hours at Autzen Stadium. Last year, the University of Oregon asked you to consider revising Eugene Code 4.190, consumption or possession of unlicensed public spaces prohibited, to expand the pre-game period when people can consume alcohol. The request was to expand that period from 4 hours pre-kickoff to 6 hours pre-kickoff, but not earlier than 7 a.m. At your July 9th council meeting, you voted, to 2018 council meeting, you voted to amend the code as requested by the university, together with a unanimously passed motion adding a new Section 3 to the ordinance that states, Section 1 of this ordinance shall sunset and be repealed effective July 1, 2019, unless extended or made permanent by future council direction. If the University of Oregon intends to request the council extend or make permanent this ordinance, the UO must submit to council by April 1st, 2019, the following. Information regarding tailgating traffic and alcohol-related arrests during the 2018 football season in comparison to previous years, a coordinated neighborhood parking plan between the University of Oregon and the city to ensure emergency vehicle access and mitigation of negative impacts to affected areas, an Autzen Stadium re-entry and re-entry policy that addresses the issue of overconsumption of alcohol by spectators, and an underage drinking enforcement policy and plan for tailgating before, during, and after the football games. You received the report from the University of Oregon on March 29th, as well as a request to make the ordinance change permanent. We do have a representative here tonight from the University of Oregon to answer any questions you have regarding the report. At tonight's work session, we're also asking your direction on the next steps. Your options include taking no further action and allowing the expanded hours to sunset, updating Section 3 and scheduling a public hearing to extend the current ordinance's sunset, update Section 3 and schedule a public hearing to make the current ordinance permanent, or update Section 3 to make other revisions to the current ordinance and schedule a public hearing. If needed, based on council direction, the public hearing will be scheduled for May 20th with possible action scheduled for May 28th. These hearings and action dates will allow for the ordinance to take effect prior to the July 1 sunset date. In preparation for tonight's work session, we did ask EPD if they had any feedback from their perspective. They did not share any concerns related to this change, and they did share that the expanded hours did mitigate some of the traffic congestion on game days. The city manager's recommendation is to pursue option 3, which is to schedule a public hearing on May 20th on an ordinance that will make the current ordinance permanent. I've asked Mike Duncan, who's the Senior Athletic Director in charge of facilities at the University of Oregon, to join me so that he can be available to make a brief statement on behalf of the University of Oregon and answer any questions that you have related to the report. Following that statement, Mike's statement, we'll turn it back to Councilor Taylor so that we can hear your feedback and answer any questions you have.
I'm Mike Duncan, Senior Associate Athletic Director at University of Oregon. We were here about a year ago asking to expand our tailgating hours at Autzen Stadium, and now we're back to ask you to make that permanent. We had a successful year with the temporary amendment. You've got some information in your packets that outlines that. In regards to the tailgating traffic, it was noticed not only by EPD but UOPD that pregame traffic was lessened because of the expanded tailgate hours. Probably most significant of all, we saw total ejections in the stadium during football games go down 36% last season, and alcohol ejections went down 47%. You also had asked us to develop a coordinated neighborhood parking plan. We met with Chevy Chase neighbors, as well as EPD, UOPD, Eugene Springfield Fire, City and University Parking and Transportation to look at the situation, and the neighbors remarked that that it had gotten much better last year. Part of that was due to the yellow zones that were painted in the neighborhood, and also part of it was due to the no reentry policy that prevented football fans from going out into the neighborhood during halftime. The reentry policy was something else that we implemented last year at Autzen Stadium, the no reentry policy, where previously football fans had been able to come into Autzen Stadium and then leave, especially during halftime. And often they engaged in binge drinking situations. Getting rid of the reentry policy made it a much more controlled environment within the stadium, and that was one of the reasons that we believe we saw the reduction in the number of incidents within Autzen Stadium. As far as the underage drinking enforcement, we have a zero tolerance policy for underage drinking in and around the stadium. That's enforced by not only law enforcement, but our alcohol monitors and our event security people. We also, UOPD actually also last year started a program, an ambassador program, safety ambassadors that provided a take-home service, a ride home for students that were not safe to get home by themselves. That was very, very successful last year and averaged over 85 rides per game. And that also helped the environment at Autzen Stadium last year. So I'm here now to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. And I have Councilor Zelenka in the queue. Anyone else? Okay. Councilor Zelenka.
And Claire. Claire.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Mike, for the report, and thanks for the work that you've done. I have to admit that I initially was skeptical of this. It sounded completely counterintuitive to me that if we increased the hours and served alcohol in the stadium, things would get better. But I stand corrected. I have season tickets, and I actually perceive that the things did get better in there, and the numbers bear that out in terms of fewer incidents, alcohol ejections, people getting kicked out of the stadium for alcohol related incidents went from 33 down to 18. And that's my personal experience as well. And so we did see things get better off. I think that's two reasons behind that. One is the no reentry policy, so people didn't go out and do binge drinking, come back in, and then the increase in the alcohol monitors you had, which was substantial. On that latter point, do you know the numbers of how many there were and how many there were 2017 versus 2018 in terms of alcohol monitors?
Well, the alcohol monitors last year, the number of specific alcohol monitors in the stadium, I believe, was between 120 and 130. That had been the number of alcohol monitors the previous year, 2017, was about 25 to 30 per game, and they were specifically in the areas where we served alcohol at that time, which was the Moshovsky Center and the club at Autzen.
Right, and staying in line, getting a beer, you actually made a bunch of people's day by carding them that didn't think they should be carded. But so one of the things that we asked for to come back was taking the 2018 statistics and comparing them to previous years. And we only got 2017, so we have 2017 versus 2018, so we have 1 year of data. Do we have data beyond comparing to the 2016, 2015?
I don't have it with me, but that's something that I should be able to put together. What are you looking for? How many?
Oh, just trends.
Okay.
Yeah, just if we had the same chart for 2016 and 2015. I mean, one of the, I'm supportive of this, but one of the issues I have is that we only have 1 year of data. Okay. We have one comparison, and 1 year of data does not make a trend. It's pretty conclusive that there's, or it leads to the conclusion that there's a trend, but it's leads me to believe that's kind of insufficient. This kind of data, you guys collect this on a regular basis, correct? You do this as a matter of course?
Yes.
So if we were to require you to, on an ongoing basis, report back to us on these numbers, would that be a problem?
No.
Okay. I think that might be one of the things that we want to add to this ordinance when we when we make it permanent is to actually have the reporting come back to us on a regular, on an annual basis, so we can compare and see if there's anything that's changing. Because 2 years is better than 1 year, 3 years is better than 2 years. So I think I would want to request that when we get around to it.
Okay, Councilor Ye.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the University of Oregon. I got a lot of positive feedback from residents in the Chevy Chase area that they were very impressed with the amount of time and attention that the U of O staff and EPD and all the folks that were working on these parking issues and getting the emergency vehicles in. And they're very serious issues to these neighbors, and they really appreciated how serious you all took it. So thank you very much from them. I agree with Alan. I think, yes, 1 year is kind of hard to say we did a great job. It'd be nice to see some, future years out. I think one of the big things that made an impact in the neighborhoods was the new reentry policy. Having people not going back into the neighborhoods or back into their cars and drinking, I think probably made a significant difference. And I don't know, maybe you can talk about, have you guys discussed the reentry policy's future, or how you see that as being, I assume it's a permanent policy you're going to keep going forward?
Yes. Our plans are to continue that. We agree that was one of the main reasons that the changes we made last year were successful. So we do plan on continuing that.
Yeah, when we have this come back, I'm interested in seeing how we might link that to the continuation of the extra hours, because I think that's the major factor that saw progress. I don't know if that's possible or that's something we want to do, but I just like to keep it in mind. And that is all. Thank you.
Councilor Syrat.
Well, I'm going to ask the city attorney directly if that is something we could codify. Before I get to that, though, I was impressed with the data and the work that the university did, and hearing from Councilor Ye that her constituents were really pleased and impressed with the work that you did on the parking coordination. So I also thank you for that. And I tend to agree with Alan that, more years of data would be preferable, but, at this point, I would be, lean towards either extending the sunset date through next year or making it permanent. But I wouldn't be comfortable just relying on the policy of the U of O around the reentry prohibition, because I do suspect that was a big contributor to the reduction in expulsions and bad behavior. So would it be possible for us to include that as part of our ordinance?
You could, and there's a couple of different options. It would be an uncodified section, not in the actual code itself. And there's a couple things that we could do depending on how you want to approach it. One would be having the uncodified section say, if in fact they decide not to have that reentry policy anymore, it's an automatic trigger that this comes back to you, and then that will give you the opportunity to repeal it. And you'd go through the process to repeal it, but you could have that in here, so it would be an automatic trigger, and it could come back to you then, and you can make your decision at that time.
And we could do the same thing with the increased or the higher level of enforcement for preventing underage drinking and over-serving?
Right. You could have whatever is important to you that continues simultaneously. It couldn't serve to automatically undo the code provisions that you adopt and make permanent, but it certainly could serve to bring it back in front of you if those changed, and then you'd be able to address it at that time.
So, yeah, I would entertain moving this to a public hearing, either to extend it or make it permanent, with the addition of at least those two, I think you said non-codified additions, so that it would be an automatic trigger to come back before council should the university change their policy on those two pieces. I might include the parking coordination as well.
I have one question. What do you do with the cars or the people to whom you give a ride home?
I'm sorry?
What do you do with the cars of the people for whom you give a ride?
Those are for students, and the majority of students are walking to Autzen, not driving.
Well, they weren't going to drive drunk anyway.
No.
Okay, Thank you. I think it sounds good. Does anyone else have a question or comment? No? Okay, Counselor Vice President, Counselor Semple, do you have a motion?
I do. I move to direct the city manager to schedule a public hearing on May 20th on an ordinance that will make the current ordinance permanent.
Second.
You have a Counselor Zelenka?
Yeah, so this is current ordinance, so that doesn't include the ability that we were just talking about making the reporting on an annual basis, or that they not codify, but have in the ordinance the no reentry policy, alcohol monitoring and parking. How do we do that and move it to public?
If that, we can, based on what I heard, we can add that to it. If that's, you can add it to the motion as well. If you just want to direct staff to include that in the ordinance, we can do that.
Okay. Would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. And I think that concludes the business of the evening. The meeting is adjourned.